This is Bad Movies We Love, part of the Shice Podcast Network.
If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hello, Bad Movie lovers, and welcome back to Bad Movies We Love. As always, I'm your host, Nick Scheist.
The master of the stupid stuff!
And boy, have I got some stupid stuff on deck for you today. But before we get to that, I got a chance to look at the Spotify rap numbers for the show, and there are a lot of new listeners this year, and so if you're one of the people that took a chance on this show, I just want to say thank you because, you know, I always come out here at the beginning of the show and I ask for the people that like the show to share the show around, and I never actually know if that is happening or not. So to see that the show has grown in the way that it has means that the word of mouth approach is working. And if you're feeling in the holiday spirit and you want to leave a rating and a review on your podcast platform that you use to listen to the show, that would really help me out a lot. Obviously, it goes a long way in helping new people discover the show. And if you want to take the plunge and become an enlisted member of the Resistance, you can do that right now at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support. And the great thing about it is the versatility. You can do one-time donations to support the show without any commitment, and you can even try out the 7-day free trial, check out the bonus episodes, see if you like what you're getting, see if it's worth the $5, which I think it is because you get more than bonus episodes. You get automatic entry into all of the giveaways we do. Just did a $50 one for Halloween. You get access to the Discord server. You get a welcome pack and a handwritten thank you note with some stickers. And perhaps best of all, you get to support an independent show like this one, and that money will go towards paying artists for their music to use on this show, stuff like that. So it's pretty good value for $5 if you ask me. If you have questions about the subscription options, or maybe you just want to ask me something about bad movies, you can do so by emailing badmovieswelove@theshice.com. I hope to hear from you, but without further ado, we've got a show to get to. And it's a crazy episode because the movie we're talking about is crazy. This one's been in the chamber for a while as Jeff Bulmer from Classic Movies Live joined the show to talk about Jim Carroll's completely off-the-wall religious time travel movie, Assassin 33 AD. Oh my God, is this the Heidi Montag, like Jesus time travel movie?
I don't think you can sell this movie stronger than a night vision assassination attempt on Jesus.
I just didn't expect it to be an explosive resurrection.
It also implies that Jesus invented forgiveness, which I think is an odd notion.
My TV watching doesn't take me into the weeds where I would stumble upon TLC's Marriage Boot Camp.
4 young geniuses, time travel and matter transfer, ultimate jihad.
Imagine the world today without Hitler. Who's to say the next guy wouldn't be even more destructive?
Perhaps Allah wants me to work through him to make things right.
Perhaps you can explain why Allah let Hitler rise to power in the first place, if he now has to use you to correct his mistake.
How dare you insult Allah!
Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey Nick, thanks for having me. I'm very excited. I've listened to a few episodes of your podcast, and I'm very excited to finally be on it and to learn more about the movie that a movie that I do hold very dear. But before I say too much, I am going to stop talking.
Well, we had spoken of this movie sort of, I don't know, several months ago, probably, when I was initially reaching out to people for guest spots in our podcast group. And fortunately, you reminded me that we had started this conversation. And while there isn't like a way I can just shoehorn this into the trajectory of the next couple of months, I feel like this movie that we're talking about, the discussion is going to end up in December, which I feel like is probably more appropriate given what this movie is. But why don't you first tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and then you can do the honors and introduce the movie that we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely. So, my name is Jeff Bulmer. I am one half of the podcast Classic Movies Live, where we talk about future classics as they're coming out. It's a podcast we're now in season 6 of. We started it back in 2019. Still fairly small. I also have a full-time job outside of podcasting, so it's I need to like devote the time to do a little better marketing of it. But anyway, it's a good show, and people should check it out if they're not already aware. We've got some exciting things coming up in the future, but I am going to leave those to the end, just so that people aren't distracted by that for the next little while.
That's fair. And I think as also as a sort of like part-time podcaster with a day job, it is not always easy to dedicate the amount of time that I would like to dedicate to the show. As much as I try, as much as I want to spend time really like shaping more of like the social media stuff, I also don't enjoy the social media stuff that much. It's like I know that I have to do it, and I do like to sort of create a personality for the show, but this is the part that I actually really love, is talking to people about the strange little movies out there. In this case, a kind of a very small movie that people either may never have heard of, or for example, I'm watching it for the first time. And I end up watching it twice, and I was hoping to get the original version the second time, but I got the director's cut both times, which does kind of spell things out a little bit more fluidly.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it a little bit as we go through sort of what the movie's about, what it does well, what it doesn't do so well, and so on. But this is a movie where I do think that is unfortunate because the director's cut makes most of the scenes are the same, but it makes some very, I think, poor choices in reaction to very deserved criticism that I think this movie probably got. I guess I'm going to be saying that a lot, I think, this episode. I think this movie got criticism for XYZ because, as you said, it's very difficult to find a lot of behind the scenes information on this movie. But like the director's cut, for example, has narration, which the movie does not actually need. And the narration largely exists to mediate some of the, I guess I'll just say, racism and xenophobia that is at the heart of this movie.
Yeah. It's interesting in that this is sort of a case where, like, if you were to take a movie and do maybe like a private screening, or you're doing some test screenings to see what you need to change, and then making those changes before you release it, okay, that sort of makes sense. But in this case, that's not what happened. This was like, oh, yes, we are under fire for these things that are very apparent in the film, and then let's sort of patchwork our way back throughout this to make it a more formulaic film. And one of the articles that I was reading, I think, sort of echoes a lot of your sentiment in that the first version of the film, while crazy and xenophobic and racist and just kind of insane from top to bottom, was at least trying wholeheartedly to do the thing that it was doing. And in comparison, the director's cut, while moving some of the things around and adding the voiceover narration to sort of smooth out some of the rough edges, I think the description that I read was, while it makes it technically like a more competent and straightforward film, it removes the earnestness that was in the original version.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the earnestness is why, I mean, this is bad movies we love. This is
Yes.
why I love this movie. Like, I think if the original version that if the first version that I had seen was Black Easter, I don't think I would have this logged 14 times on Letterboxd.
Oh my God.
I keep watching this movie. It's now an Easter tradition. I watch it every Easter. I always have a steak dinner. Like,
Okay.
I love this movie, but like, part of what makes it so good are those rough edges, because it's a guy trying something, and he doesn't always succeed, but he's always trying it, I guess, is for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, what's interesting is that I had tweeted about that I was watching this last night, right? And surprisingly, like, a lot of people were like, "What is this?" Another friend of mine chimed in like, "Oh my God, is this the Heidi Montag like Jesus time travel movie?" And I'm like,
it is.
It is. I wouldn't describe it as a Heidi Montag movie, but she is in it, and so it actually like generated probably more of a response than I would have expected, because usually when I'm tweeting about a movie I'm watching at 10 o'clock at night, it's 1 a.m. on the East Coast. None of those people are paying attention. So I typically like don't expect engagement. I just sort of like do it so that way I know that there's a roadmap of when I need to go back to this later. It's
Right.
there. But we're talking about, I guess, both Assassin 33 AD and Black Easter, in that I could not find the original version to watch. And so I was sort of forced to watch Black Easter. And, I'm looking here at the Rotten Tomatoes page for it just out of curiosity, but I'm looking also at Jim Carroll's page, the director, and his highest rated film is Assassin 33 AD at 73%, and his lowest rated film is Black Easter at 63%. So I assume that if his other movies probably made it to Rotten Tomatoes, they would maybe take that low score away from Black Easter. But across the board, it seems to reflect what fans of the first original film really think, and that one was loved for being as zany and creative and wild as it was, and then trying to make it more polished, while maybe actually working narratively, takes away from sort of that freewheeling indie creative mentality that made the first one appealing to people.
I'm curious you have a lot of episodes, so
Yes.
I unfortunately was not able to go through all of them.
Fair enough.
But have you talked about any other Christian movies before, like God's Not Dead, stuff like that?
No, but one that I covered that wasn't part of the actual episode, which we did like a watch party for, was Ultra Christ, which was Jesus is resurrected as like a superhero in modern day, and he's very taken aback by modern society. And so it is like a tongue-in-cheek comedy. And I actually had reached out to the filmmaker through the Facebook page, didn't expect to like talk to the director, and I asked him like, would you want to talk to me? And he was very bashful and was like, I don't know why you watched this movie or liked it, but I'm going to put you in touch with one of our actors, and they're probably a more adept interview subject. So I never ended up getting the interview for either of them, but that was probably as close as I got to really covering like a Christian film, like in name. I mean, we talked about Contact on my sub-series by on Sci-Fi Con, and like Contact is a movie that grapples with the intersection of technology and faith, but does so in a much headier way than Assassin 33 AD.
Right. Well, thank you for the update, because I'd actually I'd heard you talk about the Ultra Christ potential interview in an earlier episode. The episode I was listening to, it was pending, And it's unfortunate that it hasn't worked out yet, but I'm sure.
I still got those emails. I should probably chase that down and be like, look, I'm getting back into director interviews. I want to talk to you about Ultra Christ, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably reach out to Jim Carroll. He would probably come on the show and talk to me.
I mean, I have reached out. I'm in the past, I've helped out with an online film festival, and we actually reached out to Jim Carroll to see if we could do a special screening of Assassin 33. We did not hear back, but if you reach out to Jim Carroll and hear back, let me know. I won't get in the way of your interview, but I would. I just knowing that he might get back to you, then I might reach out too, because I am fascinated to pick this guy's brain. I don't know. Oh, you can't see on the camera, but here's my pages of notes. Two of these are front and back, just all of the timelines, trying to track everything. And this movie is the time travel. The time travel kind of works in this movie. That's my favorite part of it.
Well, when you sent me the notes originally, I was like, first of all, I was like, whoa, this is a lot of detail right here. I was like, okay, I don't want to read this until I actually have seen the movie. So then I watched it. And then when I got up this morning, I knew I had a couple of hours before we were doing this. So I just threw the movie on again. And then I was looking through the notes and I was like, okay, now that I have learned sort of that I watched, I tried to watch the original, had to watch the director's cut. Then reading about the differences between the two and some articles written by fans like yourself, probably, I was like, okay, now that all this note taking makes sense. I was like, because in the original, you had to patch it all together yourself rather than I'm getting voiceover, I'm getting overlay credits in order to spell out for me what is happening. And so I think maybe as just not a super fan, but a first time viewer, it's maybe beneficial to me in order to have a conversation about the movie to have seen Black Easter, but I will still continue my quest. If you want to send me the original one, I'll watch it.
I will do that. I will make sure that you have a way to watch that. I'm sorry. I was originally going to watch both versions and I just ended up not having the time. It's been a unfortunately very busy week.
That's fair. I didn't think I was going to have time to watch this twice, but when I woke up, I was like, I got 3 hours. I could put it on again. So I watched it again. And
nice.
So I think I've gotten away from the main details. But as we mentioned, this is written and directed by Jim Carroll, who is a filmmaker, but is also a TV show host for the Marriage Boot Camp on the TLC network.
Okay.
And
I knew he did marriage boot camps. I'm not a TV watcher very much, so I didn't realize it was a reality TV show thing.
Yes, my TV watching doesn't take me into the weeds where I would stumble upon TLC's marriage boot camp. But, he is somebody that I think enjoys the idea of making movies. I have some quotes from him about this movie specifically that I'm going to save for a little bit later because they are kind of wild. And I want to make sure that I get a chance to highlight that in the right context after we've talked about the film a little bit more. But the movie stars Morgan Roberts, Isla Levine, and Danny Boaz, and of course Heidi Montag somewhere in there as well. Let's go to the tail of the tape, though, because this is where we get to see some surprising numbers here. We have an audience rating. I don't even know what this is. I Googled the movie and I'm scrolling, looking for stuff about the film, and all of a sudden audience rating pops up. I don't know where they get this from because it's not the same thing as the Google rating, as far as I know. But anyway, audience rating is a 2.3 out of 5. Its Google score is a 47%. Its IMDb is a 3 out of 10. Letterboxd is a 2.1 out of 5. But then we get to Rotten Tomatoes, and it has a 73% critic score and a 100% audience score. So I know I am baffled, but I feel like the fans of the movie just went to Rotten Tomatoes and made sure that they gave it positive reviews, which is fine. That's all good. But it really sort of like pushed the overall average for the movie higher than I was expecting. And it almost took it out of actual like scoring criteria territory for the show, but ultimately lands at a Bad Movies We Love total score of 56.3 out of 100, which actually puts us in the sweet spot right between people that hate it and think it's an abysmal piece of garbage, and then people that love how insane of a movie it was and just the effort that went into making a movie as crazy as this. And as I watched it, my wife was on the couch watching her iPad and she had her headphones in, and there's a scene very early in the movie that goes from very sentimental to car crash. And I laughed so loud that she took her headphones out and she was like, "What's wrong with you?"
And that's the title drop too, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's that kind of movie where it has like huge tonal swings. And I feel like every decision that gets made in the movie is just a crazy decision. Like none of it is, although like it kind of seems like it's normal. It's like normal if you're maybe a crazy filmmaker. And so I think that's kind of what we got here.
Yeah, I think what I really like about this movie is that it is those tonal shifts. Like it's very wild. I think, Jim Carroll has an idea. He really wants to talk about time travel, and he's figured out in his head what this time travel story would look like. And the rest is just filling in the pieces, I think, from his own worldview. So you've got like this very, you've got this very, I don't know that this is how you're supposed to use this word, but this auteur filmmaker who, he's got this idea he wants to present, and he's just going to make this, whatever it takes, he's going to make his vision come alive on screen. And his vision maybe doesn't include all the connective tissue, so he just kind of fills it in with how he understands the world, which is where you get so many of these very strange decisions. I don't know, is Rashad Amir in the Black Easter cut?
Let me take a look. Rashad.
He's an extremely minor character, but he's like he's an Osama bin Laden figure who appears on a Zoom call once.
Yes. Okay, that's right. Okay. When they hack into the signal and they learn that their boss is working for the Taliban, I guess.
Basically, yeah. So there's two Muslim characters plus Rashad Amir in this movie, and one of them is played by, I believe, an Arab American, I'm not sure, and one of them is played by a Hispanic man, and they're both terrorists. So it's like, well, I need a bad guy. Muslim terrorists. It's a little weird that they're the only ones in the movie, but why would anyone else be a Muslim terrorist? Right? So
it's, I guess like the biggest question that like I'm asking myself in watching the film is this made from the kind of perspective of an anti-Muslim extremist sentiment, because there had to be those qualifying changes to the director's cut to come in and say, well, here's the voiceover telling you, like, don't be really mad at Muslims. Most Muslims are good, but this guy's an extremist. So based on just like the nature of the story and the idea that this character is obsessed with going back in time and proving that Jesus wasn't the Son of God by preventing the resurrection, it seems like so very specific, but also like a complete miscommunication of this person's understanding of Islam.
I don't think it comes from a place of like extreme Islamophobic sentiment. I think it comes from a place of having never met a Muslim. Because like as you see in Black Easter, in the narration, clearly, on paper, Jim Carroll knows that Islam is just another religion and most Muslims are fine.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what he knows about Islam from, from just the way that his movie plays out in general is that Islam is not Christianity and they believe different things. So, a Muslim going back in time to prevent the resurrection and kill Jesus and bag him and get him back is like, of course a Muslim would want to do that because a Christian wouldn't want to do that. And so I think it comes from a place of like extreme, if anything, extreme ignorance just about that part of the world and needing a villain to make his movie work.
Yeah, like it's a big idea for sure. And I like that you pointed out that the time travel kind of works. I mean, I feel like Carroll's obviously interested in time travel films and wants to at least adhere to some semblance of actually sort of putting things in chronological order with his time travel. Granted, the science of the time travel doesn't really get explained or doesn't hold up under scrutiny. I mean, we have our main character Ram just suddenly exclaiming time travel. And it's like,
well, it's because he's a genius.
Yeah, he's a genius. So it's like, well, we're electrocuting some objects, and then time travel because we need to skip over the part where we actually lay out the science part of it, which is fine. I mean, the movie doesn't need to hang its hat on its science, but again, for like a movie that's being made by a guy with a kind of a religious agenda, making this movie, wanting to make a movie that is an action sci-fi movie for Christians, you do back yourself into a corner in the sense that if you really get too deep into the science, like you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. But I will give Carroll credit in that the design for Ram Goldstein as a character is a guy who is not like super devoutly religious. In fact, openly challenges the notion of Jesus being the Son of God. And that's kind of a big thing to do in a movie for Christians. Like you have a lot of other characters in the movie that are believers who really sort of like push that side of the narrative forward. But to have your main character be a scientist who doesn't necessarily believe it, I think is actually like a big swing for this movie, and it works.
Well, and one thing in my head, I'm comparing this movie as I was watching it the last time. I was comparing it to something like God's Not Dead. And I don't know if you've seen God's Not Dead, but the main bad guy of that movie is an atheist. And he's an atheist because he's mad at God because his mom died or something. And he was like, how could God let this happen? And Ram Goldstein in this movie is also, I don't know that he's an atheist because he's mad at God, but he does explicitly exclaim at one point, I am mad at God. So like it's part of his atheism. But unlike something like God's Not Dead, where that guy is like an unrepentant villain, and at the very end, when he gets hit by a car, like the pastors gather around him and say, this is a joyous day. Like this movie is actually very sympathetic to its atheist protagonist, who in many similar movies could have very easily been an antagonist and basically irredeemable just by virtue of his atheism and how he comes to that. Where in this movie, by the end, he doesn't even convert necessarily. Like, by the end, he has a Christian girlfriend, and his Christian girlfriend, is definitely trying to convert him, but he's not explicitly like, okay, well, I go to church every Sunday now.
Yeah, and I'm curious now that like you spell it out that way, if for Carroll, this is kind of like when we talk about like him putting his worldview out there, like, is this him where it's like he sort of believes in God, but is not like a devoutly Christian person that goes to church? Because I listened to the beginning of one of the interviews that I listened to. He says that he feels that most people that are believers have had that moment where it's the like, why did you do this to me, God? Question, right? And I think that's fair, but also I think building an entire movie around sort of like a cliched anecdote about the experience of being a person of faith and not really like having enough deeper context than that. You sort of get into it with the Brandt character, and that like he loses his family and he's kind of suicidal, and he's the one who I think is most responsible for grappling with his faith, much more so than any of the other characters. Like without Brandt, we don't really have anybody that that grapples with faith or morality, I don't think, too much. So between those two characters, I mean, like there's more work done there than I anticipated from a movie like this, to be fair. Whether or not it's handled in great fashion is debatable, but it is addressed in that you do have someone who is sort of like a soldier, a Christian, and then struggles with the loss of his family and his dwindling faith as a result. So much to the point where like he's more than happy to double tap Jesus in the past, like as the leader of the SEAL Team 6 that hunts down Jesus and the disciples.
And like for as much as the, I guess, main plot of this movie at a certain point revolves around Ram trying to forgive Brandt explicitly, that's what there's so many points where, you know, people just tell him forgive Brandt and he doesn't do it, and then at the end he finally does. I think that the actual like character growth in the way that plot point presents itself actually does come from Brandt, who is sort of kind of in the background going through the 5 stages of grief, losing his family, and by the end sort of, I want to say maybe this isn't quite as explicit in the text of the movie, but he does like he forgives himself and learns to live on despite basically every single appearance of him being a situation where he could and actively tries to die and then not doing that. There's so many points where, you know, Brandt is basically put in the position where someone's going to kill him and he's like, do it. And then it just doesn't happen. And then at the very end, he kind of learns to be okay with that, despite having, in the prime continuum, lost everything.
Yes, this is like Earth 616 for this universe, and that this is the main timeline, or at least the original timeline, if nothing else. But the director's cut starts with the Jesus execution, kind of. Like there's credits, there's the car driving on the road, rewind, explanation of time travel, boom, Jesus dies. And then that same sequence plays out like 40 minutes in. So I'm thinking to myself, that was added at the beginning of the director's cut, right? So in the original version, well, I think the director's cut in spelling that part out makes it seem like the assassination of Jesus has already happened in the past, which has then like sort of led to the story that we're on, which I think is like kind of a tactical mistake if you're trying to correct that.
Yeah.
Whereas like burying it at least at 40 minutes, it's like, okay, it's a surprise. And then the movie continues to get more and more wild from there.
Well, it's a surprise. And at that point, they've established that if you change anything in the past, it will take some time for the future to catch up.
Yeah.
But it will happen. So when you start the movie with the assassination in the past and sort of imply that happened in the continuum we're already on, that it doesn't establish those stakes as well as just dropping it 40 minutes in. Like, even pretty early into this movie, you have a good idea what's eventually coming. It's wild when it finally gets there, but like, it's a surprise, but it's also not exactly unexpected that Jesus gets killed. But at that point, when it happens, you're like, uh-oh, now time is going to rewrite itself. Now there's stakes. They have to make sure they fix this quickly. Otherwise, you know, you end up in the world without forgiveness, which Felix ends up in anyway, and is, I guess, doomed to live out the rest of his days in.
There's also zombies there, it looks like, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
that's added. That's added in the director's cut.
Gotcha,
In the original,
okay.
it's just like a toxic wasteland, but in the director's cut, they add zombies for some reason.
Yeah, I don't understand it because like just having a world without forgiveness doesn't automatically equal zombie apocalypse. But I guess 2020 like zombie apocalypse was popular, so add some
It
zombies in
also
there.
it also implies that Jesus invented forgiveness, which I think is an odd notion.
He was just the spokesperson for forgiveness, not the
He
inventor. Yeah.
exactly. He was a big advocate, but I don't think he was. I don't think that you have no forgiveness without Jesus. I think other people, even around the time of Jesus, did occasionally forgive people. I think it happened.
Yeah, I mean, you're maybe handcuffing the notion of forgiveness to faith. Like, in order to
Yeah.
be a good Christian, forgiveness is a part of that, and Jesus is the mouthpiece for why that is important. But, we've talked a lot about sort of the identity of this movie. And so for people that are listening, yes, this is a time travel movie to undo the resurrection of Christ. I mean, even if you look at the poster for the movie, you kind of can get an idea for what the movie might be about. But it's a good segue to get into our synopsis haikus. So I'm going to ask you, did you prepare a synopsis haiku for this movie?
I was having trouble with it, so
Me too.
I've got two, and I don't know if they're perfect, but I do have two of them.
I initially wrote two as well, and then pared down to just one.
Okay, is it okay if I read both of them? Because I
Yeah.
think one of them, I don't know. I don't know if they both make sense. So I'm
Look,
just going to try.
you wrote them both. You put in the effort. So yes, go for it, please.
So the first one is four young geniuses, time travel and matter transfer, ultimate jihad. Which is a little more interpretive than maybe a synopsis might want to be. So the other one kind of synopsizes the second half of the movie.
Fair.
To save the savior in all time continuums, Ram must forgive Brent.
Okay. Yeah, I think between the two of them, you do capture the movie well. And initially when I sort of approached it from a perspective of like, how do I explain what this movie is to somebody? I wasn't thinking of a synopsis, and so I initially scrapped that one after I wrote it, and I ultimately landed on Ram's got a plan, man. Time travel with friends and foes, Jesus on the line.
Oh, that does it pretty well.
So we got time travel, we got friends. It's
And
not,
you got
it's
the
not
stakes
amazing.
there.
Yeah, we got the stakes. Jesus is on the line. Not Jesus is on the line like he's on the phone, but it is it's a hard movie to summarize because it has so much going on, especially when you narrow it down to 17 syllables and say explain this movie to somebody. It's very difficult, but it was a challenge, I think, that was rewarding in that you really have to pare down to what are the essentials of the film. And if I were to, tell somebody else about this, I would say it's a time travel plot to kill Jesus. And the alternate title was Resurrection Time Conspiracy, right? So little bit more explanatory than Assassin 33 AD.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a alternate title.
I don't know if that was like the working title before it got shopped around, but yeah, Resurrection Time Conspiracy is a bit of a mouthful because I think the sort of the 33 AD is the implication that we're going back, so you can kind of erase the time travel from the title, and it's shorter, it's catchier, it's a little strange, and kind of makes you want to watch it. Like when you told me about the movie, I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
And so in watching it and having a good time with it, I was pleasantly rewarded. And I think there's a lot of, if not outright good, there is a lot of interesting stuff in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think every time I come back to it, I either like rediscover something I forgot or I find something new. Like this time, This time when I was watching it, I wanted to know where the tomato comes from because there's a point where he goes, where one of the SEAL team, Sabir, is walking around with Brant in a market in, I guess, just outside of Jerusalem, and he's got a tomato, and someone like one of the legionnaires like comes up to him for stealing, and he's like, "It's just a tomato," but how did he get a tomato in 33 AD in ancient Palestine? Like, I think there weren't tomatoes there. Tomatoes came from North America, and I think didn't even get over to that part of the world for another 1,000 years at least. So, I wanted to know, did he bring the tomato back with him? And no, the tomato is part of the market for some reason. So that's just something Jim Carroll didn't know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like, hey, we need maybe produce for this market scene, like tomatoes are maybe more affordable than some other things, but yeah, you needed something that was easily recognizable so that the audience could pick up on like, hey, this is a piece of produce that we recognize. But yeah,
I don't know how many apples there were in that area,
Fair.
but like I think an apple wouldn't have raised the same questions. Tomato is just something I know from grade school comes from North America.
I mean, it could have been like a piece of bread or something too. Like, if you're gonna go for like biblical accuracy, I know there's examples of food in the Bible, so
Yeah.
just use something from the Bible. And I mean, like, no one's gonna question you if it's like if you rip up some like sourdough or something. No one's gonna be like, "Hey, that's sourdough. They weren't making that yet, right?" But
Yeah.
you're asking the audience to like, or you're putting the audience in a position to ask some questions that you don't necessarily want them asking in a movie where you're already asking quite a lot of them. So
Right.
fair enough. But we had mentioned it before, but if you had to hazard a guess as to why this movie is considered to be a bad movie, what's the thing that you would hang your hat on?
Well, I want to preface it with something I said off air earlier, which is I don't know if it's considered a bad movie because I don't know if this movie is considered. Like I don't know how popular. I'm always pleasantly surprised to see when people know about this movie before I proselytize to them. But I would say that this movie does sort of when I was first like introduced to this movie, it fits within a genre or group of movies that I typically already consider, go into with low expectations. Like I try to eliminate those expectations, but like this is a Christian movie and it is a very explicitly Christian movie and it's like a Christian direct to DVD movie. So we're talking about a bunch of different, we're talking about the intersection of a bunch of different lowbrow genres basically. And within that, I think that like, this movie was never going to be playing in any major theaters. It was not going to it probably never even got like a real limited release. We're not talking about something that, the director was trying to get seen by everybody or that anyone was going to pay for to get seen by everybody. So I think it's just one that's very easy to come into with low expectations. And then once you're actually watching it, a lot of the elements of it feel kind of amateurish or like kind of like a first draft. Like the fact that the director's cut changes so much in post, including that narration and adding and rearranging scenes to try and explain things better, to me is evidence that like someone after the premiere of this movie was like, you need another draft of this actually. So it feels very a lot of this movie, despite the fact that it is in fact made and put all the way onto the screen, is like a lot of like first draft, first try. Like it's a movie that you're watching and you definitely think probably needed another pass.
That's fair. And before we take a look back at the trailer, I don't know if I asked you, like, how did you even come across this movie in the first place?
So I'm in a few different movie discords, and one of them is about it's a movie discord for people that try to watch all the Oscar movies every year. and we were really, really, really active in 2020 to 2021.
Gotcha.
But then after the Oscars, you have a several month slump where there's like, you can start watching Oscar movies, but in March, you don't really know what the Oscar movies for next year are going to be yet.
Yeah.
So things kind of quiet down, but because it had been so active, people didn't necessarily want things to quiet down. So people just started sharing what movies they liked. And someone, I don't know how, I'd have to ask him how he learned about this movie, randomly brought up, has anyone ever seen Assassin 33 AD? This is so weird. And I have a friend also in that Discord who is very into like bad Christian movies. And so he was immediately like, we have to watch this. So we all watched it, and then we all watched it again and again and again. And now I've seen this movie at least 15 times across different versions.
I mean, I saw it twice in the last 2 days, so I could see how a movie like this could be infectious in that you kind of like want to understand how a movie like this exists and how this movie had a budget of over $1 million. Because sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But I also want to ask you too, in the original version of the film, are there like timestamps throughout the time travel moments? Because I feel like that was something that was very like explicit. There's on-screen titles of like, oh, we're in like this year, and now we're back to this year, and now it's this year, and now it's back to this year. So that way you're not sort of guessing as to which continuum they are a part of.
No, there aren't, and that's why mapping out the continuums, it takes 2 full pages.
Okay, so that answers that question. But let's take a look at the trailer now, and we'll see what this movie was advertised as, because I'd never heard of it until you sent it my way. Before we get to the trailer, it's time for a quick word from today's sponsor. With the rise of AI, data mining, and the surveillance state in general, the world is changing, but your timeline doesn't have to. Introducing the Paradox Guard Temporal Home Security System, the first and only home security system designed to protect your past, your present, and your property. Worried about intruders, identity theft, someone traveling back in time to undo key personal achievements? Well, fear no more. Using chronomotion sensors, retroactive alert notifications, and patented faith-based encryption, Paradox Guard identifies unauthorized timeline disruptions before they ever happen. Just install the app, place the beacon nodes around your home, and relax knowing you have 24/7 protection against paradoxing, causality interference, and unsolicited historical edits. From small events like erasing that embarrassing college haircut to major ones like tampering with foundational life moments, Paradox Guard has you covered. Secure your memories, defend your destiny, stop intruders before they ever existed. Paradox Guard from Church Key Technology. And now, back to the show.
Target acquired. Rally on me.
But they start with the SEAL team.
I think it's a strong way to sell the movie. Oh, and here it is. It says nominated Best Screenplay in more international film festivals than any movie in history, which...
Just this flat-out lie?
I think it might be technically true, but like technically is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh yeah. I used to have a list of those awards. I wish I still had it.
In my wildest expectations, I would have never figured that you would create time travel. My mind is racing with the possibilities.
Okay, so yeah, Ahmed, his parents are killed, but then the terrorists don't kill him?
No, I guess they like recruited him because he was I think.
Are you okay?
We have a problem. I agreed to build the timesheet.
They already did it.
Oh, here's Ram's dad with the skinny jeans.
We can't kill him.
Can be fashionable.
Jesus is a prophet. We should honor him. Yes, we will be correcting the greatest deception of all time.
I get it. It's the ultimate jihad.
Oh, that's the line you missed.
Jesus before the resurrection.
The ultimate jihad.
Christian that ever existed.
I don't.
He will be remembered as a great prophet, but not as the Son of God.
But that's the thing, is like, he's only remembered as the Son of God amongst, admittedly, many, but not even all Christian sects.
Yeah, and Ahmed's very focused on that particular thing. And so one of the user reviews that picks at that particular thread says, quote, and the antagonist justification for all of it is that a Taliban warlord killed his parents for being Christians. So instead of using the time machine to send a tactical team to take out the Taliban warlord before he can kill the parents, he decides that killing Jesus is the proper course of action. Despite his buddy saying, like, hey, Jesus is a respected prophet in Islam, and we shouldn't do this to him. So it is kind of like a big gambit to hinge everything on, like, no, I'm really obsessed with going back in time and proving that Jesus was not the Son of God.
Well, I think it's interesting what that review that you just brought up said, because I'd actually never thought it mentioned very early on that terrorists kill Ahmed's family for being Christian, and I didn't even pick up on that in the movie. I in all of my watches of it, I've never picked up on the fact that on Ahmed being a Christian, at least originally. And I think that's really interesting, because one thing that I did write down, and I had to remind myself of the context for this earlier today, is, does Ahmed believe Jesus is God? Which I thought would be very interesting, considering he's supposedly, I had thought, a Muslim. But at one point, he just sort of offhandedly or when he's talking to Brandt to try and hype him up, to try and get him to lead the SEAL Team 6, he says, "You're mad at God." And then I don't remember his exact words, but basically, what better way to get back at God than to kill Jesus? And I was like, wait a minute. Does he believe that Jesus is God? Does he believe is he trying to convince Brandt to go and kill God? Is that what he's trying to do? Because I thought that was, again, really weird, considering Ahmed is, I thought, a Muslim, and at least I think in the text of the movie is a Muslim now, even if he wasn't always. So
yeah, but his parents being Christian, you would think that he would either be Christian, but then there's kind of a loose idea of what happens to him with the terrorists, because they just say, like, take him. Like, he cuts the leader's face with a sword, and they're just like, yeah, I like this kid's spunk. We're gonna make sure that he's part of the team in the future. And then there's just like a casual explanation, piece of exposition where I think Ram says it must be Stockholm syndrome, and they just like move right along to explain why Ahmed would just be okay with that. And so of all the characters, I think that like would be grappling with sort of the notion of faith and maybe being raised Christian in an environment where that's not okay, it seems like there's some foundation for Ahmed to be a more interesting and grounded character. And then a lot of that gets passed off to Brandt in sort of like the grappling with faith notion, where the way that Ahmed is presented to us is that, like, he's a Muslim extremist, and the movie, even in the director's cut, like, make sure to tell us that, like, hey, not all Muslims are like that, but Ahmed is an extremist and he's the bad kind. I'm not talking about all Muslims, but just this one guy, he's the bad kind. And so, like, they tell us that he's Muslim, but his parents were Christians and were persecuted for that. So of all the people in the story who should be dealing with the notion of, like, maybe being angry at God or even angry at Jesus because of that, he's not really. But then he, like you said, he's obsessed with proving that Jesus is not the Son of God. And I can prove it, right? And then he tells his worker, like, oh, but he is God, so go take your revenge on him. And I think that may just be a script oversight, in that you're not really, like, thinking through all of these things, right? You need the guy to be a terrorist. You need him to do this, but then you also need him to convince the guy who's upset to go and do the thing. So you're not, like you said, first draft kind of style of writing and not being double checked.
But it's a shame because, like you're saying, there are all these interesting avenues to explore if you wanted to do a second and a third and a fourth draft and like have someone look at it. Because, the more we talk about Ahmed, I'm probably more interested in Ahmed at this moment than I have ever been watching this movie, because there is all of this stuff to explore there. And, he ultimately does not get as much to do in this movie as he could, considering what a character he is. And actually, I don't remember if you mentioned his name. Ahmed Akbar is played by Gerardo de Villa, who is he is a Hollywood actor. He's not exactly a big Hollywood actor, but James Gunn likes him, so he's been in a lot of James Gunn movies as like a very bit part. And he is probably one of the higher profile actors in this movie.
Yeah, and he's saddled with kind of a character that's not fully fleshed out. He's given the basics in order to convince the audience that he's the bad guy and that his reasons for being the bad guy are like good enough. But since we're talking about actors a little bit, I want to ask you about specifically Morgan Roberts, who plays Ram Goldstein, and Danny Boaz, who plays Brant, because there's a lot of times in this movie, I think Boaz particularly, where I'm like, does he know what movie he's in? Because like he's acting as if this is serious, where a lot of the movie does not come across serious at all. And I guess I was just like surprised to see it, because in a movie full of sort of roles that are either intentionally comedic, like we see with Lamar Usher or even with Isla Levine a lot of the time, to have Boaz like really be sort of like teary-eyed for much of the film, and even when he's not, it's like he's sitting there in the chair with like this ridiculous story happening next to him, and it's like his eyes are very red and watery, like he's taking it very seriously.
And well, I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day. I think one of the essential components of having a movie that's so bad it's good, and without even judgment on whether this movie fits that bill, one of the essential components is you need some people who are at least kind of taking it seriously. And like, maybe that means they know what movie they're in and they're like playing up the camp in the right way. But sometimes that just means like, this guy is very passionate about this character that he prepared for and is playing that character in the way that, he thinks that character's story, whether it's this story that he's actually in or some version of the character's story that mostly exists in his head, deserves. And I think that Donny Boaz is really doing that. Like, he is very much, I don't know, like, what he did to prepare for this role or where it comes from or where this role for him comes from. But I think he's being very, like, he's very seriously, like, exploring something through this character that, the rest of the movie, it doesn't make you expect. I don't want to say it warrants it or not, but like, he's the guy who's taking it seriously, who like helps to ground this movie in, they're not just all taking the piss. Someone actually means what they're saying here.
Yeah, and I found it interesting because in a movie where like a lot of the movie is kind of unserious, to then pivot to him being very serious, like you said, is one of the sort of ingredients that you need in the recipe for this. But there's a quote in Jaws that Quint is saying when he's talking about the shark the first time. He's like, this shark is either very smart or very dumb. And I'm like, that's this movie right here. It's either very smart or very dumb. And it sort of oscillates between like its really big ideas and then the limitations of like the practical application of those ideas. But what Morgan Roberts does in the lead sort of feels like it's both. Like, he's taking it seriously enough to where I feel like that he's invested in that character. But then that character is also written in a way that's sort of like nerdy guy next door friendly stereotypes. So it's not asking like so much of him, but I feel like given the nature of the performance, I felt like it was pretty solid for the lead in this.
Yeah, I think he brings what that performance needs. So like he's a good anchor for the movie because everyone else can play off him as well as they need to. Like as much as I love him, the guy who plays Simon, Simon couldn't be the lead in this movie.
Yeah.
Like uh, Lamar Usher as Simon couldn't lead this movie in the way that his character is written because like he's a big character that needs to play off Morgan Roberts and needs to like um he needs to be the goofy guy to Ram Goldstein's straight man, even though neither of them quite fits that description.
Fair, yeah. But yeah, Lamar Usher is good, but that character is written like as comic relief almost through the entirety. But then at the end, when they're finally like have time traveled, he really gets into like some serious conversations. Has a very serious conversation with Jesus. Has a very serious conversation with Ram post his other self's death. And then kind of has like a serious moment when he dies for, well, not for real, but like, I guess for real, when he shoots the hard drive and like he's responsible for making sure that his friends escape and survive. And so, like you said, he's a bit character, but given both the job of being funny, which even Ram at one point is saying, hey, this is my friend Simon. He's like super cool and funny and we love hanging out together and like working as scientists. And so like he's really like hyping him up before we even meet him, before he even has a funny line that's warranted. So given just like the nature of the project, do you think that the actors read the script and were like, we know what we're getting into, and so we're just gonna sort of give tonally appropriate performances for a movie that is unserious? Or, I mean, we obviously see that Donny Boaz really gives a lot of himself, and that could just be like a thing for him as an actor where it's like, I'm never gonna like half-ass a project. I'm always gonna give it my all. But like, do you think that this was something where the actors were dialed into the fact that like we're making a bad movie?
I really don't know.
It's tough to say, right?
I think probably I'd be more likely to say yes than no there if I like had to pick an answer, but it's really hard to know because this is such a disparate group of actors. Like I don't know how these actors came together or if any of them like have any relationship. I think one of them, I remember reading somewhere that Ilsa Levine is a friend of or maybe Jim Carroll's daughter-in-law, maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, I could be wrong. I don't want to put that out there if that's fully incorrect. But like I think, but like I don't know how you get Donny Boaz and following them both on Twitter. I don't know how you get Donny Boaz and Gerardo de Villa in the same room and have them not kill each other. Actually, but like I think that I think some of them, I don't know. I think some of them, read this and knew what they were getting into, and other ones, and the people that didn't also read this and knew what they were getting into. They just had different ideas of what that is. Like Donny Boaz is in a completely different movie than Morgan Roberts, for better in this case, I think. But I think they both just had very different ideas of what this movie is, and are doing what they need to do to be in the movie they think they're in.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, that's part of I think the earnestness that is compelling in a film like this. And that like, you do see people trying where, a lot of movies sort of that operate on a similar frequency are movies that maybe spend their budget to get somebody who is an A-list actor or was an A-list actor and is no longer. I mean, like Eric Roberts makes movies like this, right? Nick Cage has made movies like this in his career, but like Nick Cage is a guy who's always going to give all of himself to a project, no matter like how bad all of the pieces around him are. And so to see that Gerardo had worked with Jim Carroll on his previous film, Evil Behind You, it makes sense that he's going to come along again. And it looks like he plays like a Middle Eastern guy or maybe some sort of Arab actor or a character in that as well. And that his character's name is Abdul Satir. So he's definitely typecasting that guy, but he's like, you want to come and do it again in my other movie? So, you know, I'm just like trying to wrap my head around like what it must have been like on set during production for this kind of stuff. But I want to go to that quote now from the interview that I mentioned earlier, because the interview was asking Carroll about time travel and sort of his approach to it. And the part I'm paraphrasing is that he's like, well, yeah, I understand it because I wrote it. But then, quote, I'm sure as people watch it, they're going to struggle. So like he knew that the movie that he wrote was going to be a struggle for people to track. And so in doing so, like you're making a movie that is going to cause your audience to struggle with it. So it's like, okay, I understand the director's cut to like clean up some of that stuff, but like you said, it was more of like a first draft, second draft kind of thing. And then the interviewer asks him after that, like, what do you want people to take away from this movie? And I think the interviewer was maybe not necessarily a fan, but someone who is definitely happy to have the director come on and talk to them. And they weren't trying to like really make fun of them. They're trying to be genuine in the interview. But Jim Carroll said, I hope that they say to themselves, did that really happen in the Bible? What about that guy running nude away at the very end? Is that true? So like if his intention was to make a movie that was confusing and also to then have the audience at the end of the film be asking themselves questions of whether or not it's biblically accurate, I think is completely disingenuous. I don't know if it really is, but it doesn't seem true. Like if you're a Christian person and you're making a movie like this, either like you don't actually know anything about Christianity, which is possible, and like you're just sort of like a Christian on paper, but to say that your goal with the movie is to have your audience question the biblical accuracy of your film as though time travel is real, I mean, like my jaw dropped. I'm like, that can't be the truth.
I'm very confused by that quote.
I know.
And now I need to now I wish I had the Bible verse pulled up that they bring up at the end. Because at the very end, I think, being as charitable as I can, I think that I'm wondering if he's specifically referring to this Bible quote that he brings up at the very end. So after the time travel has happened and Ram has saved Jesus and Ram has killed Ahmed Akbar, but only in this time continuum, he's laying there dying in Amy's arms, and he says, Amy, bring up your Bible app. And she brings up iDisciple, which is a real app.
Wow.
And she brings up the verse talking about, I think it's where the Romans meet Jesus and the disciples in the night, like as they're coming away from Gethsemane. And there's a man who's like who doesn't have a name, who's like dressed in linens and running away. And he's like, good, I know it worked because that man was me. Like the implication.
Tell him it was me.
Yeah. And like, I wonder if that's what he's referring to, because, I mean, when I heard that, I'm like, that's vague enough that, yeah, is that a real quote? Should I go pull up that Bible verse? He doesn't say what exactly the Bible verse is, so you got to search for it. But being as charitable as I can, I wonder if he's specifically saying, I want the audience to come away thinking, is this Bible verse real? And like, how can we explain this random, unexplained, unnamed man in the Bible? Let's tell the story of that unnamed man in the Bible. Because the Bible does have a lot of like odd verses that kind of go nowhere. So like picking one of those out and being like, I want to explore this. Maybe that's interesting. Maybe that's what he was getting at.
Yeah, and I mean, like, look, there's no shortage of cherry picking Bible quotes in the world,
Right.
and using them to just like be a means to its own end. But I guess I'm caught between the idea of, as a filmmaker, if your goal is to maybe make the kind of Christian movie that doesn't get made, and your real goal is to like have more people pick up the Bible and read the Bible out of curiosity, right? That's one thing. But to be like, I hope that people watch my movie and think that actual time travel happened, and that and that people went back in time to stop the assassination of Jesus, or to assassinate him, or both in this case, I think it's just like, it's incongruent with my concept of, I guess, media literacy. But like, if you were showing this to someone in maybe like Sunday school who's seeing their first ever movie, okay, maybe that kid is going to be like, hey, did we really time travel and save Jesus? Like, if any other person, I think, would be able to use common sense to just put two and two together. But maybe I'm, being a little too generous with that.
Well, I remember when I was in first grade. When I was in first grade, I was going to a Lutheran university. Maybe I was in third grade at that point. Anyway, I went to not university. I went to a Lutheran elementary school, and I remember like Jurassic Park 3 had just come out, and one of my friends had just seen it, and he was a huge fan of dinosaurs. So he was like, and we had like creationist pastor come and give a talk on, creationism. I don't remember exactly what part, but there's a picture of like Jesus reading a story to a dinosaur or something. And my friend afterwards was like, yeah, I'm going to go ask the pastor if Spinosaurus was real. And like, that's exactly what you're describing there. If this is someone's first movie, it's like, oh, I'm going to go ask my pastor, did that really happen? And a good pastor will be like, no, but let's explore this story.
Yeah. Yeah. A good pastor can sort of parse out the meaning of some of these stories without like having to be a literalist.
Right. And like, I think I definitely get what you're saying about it being disingenuous, because I think that at least the way that you presented that quote, so I guess the way that quote is in the interview, I feel like something that would be, I feel like it might be closer to the truth that he had a fun idea and wanted to try it out. I don't really understand the idea that I wanted to make people believe that this is the truth. It's like, I don't think you did. I think you had a fun idea and you wanted to try it out.
And I think it's okay to admit that and just be like, look, most of the Christian movies that we get are like either very serious or very, for lack of a better term, Lifetime movie style movies, right? They're very particular. They're very cookie cutter in the style that they're delivered. They're very much about like challenges to faith, whether that be through an illness, whether that be through like something happening to a child. Like a lot of them adhere to a very similar playbook, and that's okay. But if that's the only thing you get as a Christian moviegoer, right? Like, I'm going to use Christian rock as an example, right? Like, you like rock music, but rock music in your religion like promotes a lot of behaviors that you're not really supporting. So Christian rock is like an alternative to that. And so like, if I look at this movie as if it's trying to be like the Christian rock version of films made in that vein, then I would be totally okay with him just like saying that. Like, I wanted to make something more creative and more entertaining and more engaging for a young Christian audience than the kind of stuff that we have. Totally acceptable answer, I think. But the answer he gave is crazy. And it makes me more interested in the movie if he really is like an insane person.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking too, like, especially if this is, and maybe I don't think we're putting words in his mouth, but maybe we're interpreting, maybe this is partially our interpretation. But like, if he's making this for a young Christian audience that wants to see something exciting, I mean, to compare this to something like God's Not Dead feels like a sermon. And a lot of Christian movies feel like sermons. And a young Christian audience, especially, I remember when I was young and going to church is boring. You're there for, like, you're at church for the stuff that comes after that. Maybe you have a really good Sunday school teacher who does like an exciting class, or it's like the fellowship afterwards. The actual sermon is the boring part. So if you want to make something that's like that's like, so that the Christian movies that are coming out aren't only just sermons, or, the Christian rock example you said, yeah, that's great. I think that's cool. And I think that, I don't know, can I say, I don't know if I can say that's a more honest answer, but it would sound like a more honest answer, because I guess I don't know what's in his heart, so I can't comment on the veracity of what he's saying.
Yeah. I mean, every now and then, one of the creatives that's involved in one of the movies that I talk about here on the show, I'll see that like they listen to it, and I'm like, sometimes I'm mortified. And with the audience for this movie being kind of as generally small as it is, I think it's got like 2,000 reviews on Letterboxd, so like that's pretty small, but more than I maybe anticipated. I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Carroll ends up listening to this, and if you do, number one, don't take too much of this to heart. We're film nerds talking about a film, but yeah, seriously, if you want to come talk to me, I'm here, and we can have this discussion in earnest with you if you want. Because right now, yeah, it's a lot of just speculation as to like intention behind the film, because I feel like I still don't really know what the intention is, because there's a lot of low budget sci-fi movies that have fun with concepts like this, and I feel like this movie is maybe closer to some of those than it is to like a movie about religious allegory.
Right. And just really quick, if Jim Carroll is listening to this, no matter what it may sound like I'm saying here, like no matter how I hope that nothing I'm saying comes off hostile, but even if it does, I want to make it very clear. My ultimate goal with talking about Assassin 33 AD in any capacity would be for more people to know about it, so that you can have all the materials you need to make a sequel, because I love this movie.
Yeah, and I mean, like, yeah, you watched the movie 14 times. I watched it twice in the last 2 days. This is never a show about punching down. We're not here to like make fun of this movie. We're here to like talk about it genuinely and talk about why you love this film. And I think we've done a pretty good job of really highlighting a lot of the things that are enjoyable about this film. And had I not listened to the interview with Jim in preparation for this interview, or for this conversation, I wouldn't have even had, that round in the chamber to talk about. But like, for a movie with as much like gun violence and death as there is, I am still sort of curious, like, is this, as described by other people, as like a misguided Christian propaganda film, which I don't feel like it is. Honestly, I could see why someone would look at it and be like, yes, this is what it is. I do feel like, obviously, there's notions of Christianity that are layered into the storytelling itself, and that's why it's about the assassination of Jesus and many other things. But as a piece of propaganda, I don't know that it even works if it wanted to be. So yeah, I'm stuck.
I don't think there's the intentionality behind this to be propaganda, because I don't think that I don't think that this movie feels like at any point it wants its audience to become Christian, or its Christian audience to say, yep, that's the way the world really is, or anything like that. It's it is very informed by a Christian worldview, a very explicitly
Yes.
Christian worldview.
Yes.
But I think it's very telling that the character who starts the movie as an atheist is still an atheist at the end. And like, I mean, it's telling for a lot of different reasons, but in a movie that is Christian propaganda, I think that atheist would either be dead or a Christian by the end.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, that's why I would want to ask Mr. Carroll, like, are these characters reflections of your own internal struggles with your faith, right? Because I think that is reflected in several characters, from Ram to Brant to Ahmed. I mean, even to Simon, who,
Yeah.
like, at the end is like, do you believe that he's legit? I think that question about the legitimacy of Jesus's story as the Son of God is kind of like the central core of the film, and you have a lot of characters pointing towards that, and some of them point more more directly than others. Some of them kind of sit around and observe, and then there's some who are very much against it, and it feels like that's the nucleus of the story. So I'm curious with Jim, like, how does he personally feel? Because I think being a Christian person in the modern world, and maybe struggling to associate or to fall in line with the church as is, might be a real thing, and then that would explain a lot of like why this movie sort of operates the way that it does.
And it has it's really interesting how it gets at the core of that belief, that nucleus that you were just saying, because I think the one of my I'm horrible at quotes, so I want to say one of my favorite quotes, but I'm definitely just going to paraphrase it. At the very end, comes from Simon when he's talking to Ram, and he says, "Whether or not Jesus is God, Jesus believes he is. Therefore," and like I think it's kind of clumsy the way he says it, but it's also like it doesn't matter. But to some degree, it doesn't matter what the truth is here.
Yeah.
It matters how we're acting on it, which I think is like a really, again, it's a little bit clumsy the way that message comes across, but I think it's like a really interesting message for the type of movie that this would usually be classed alongside.
No, for sure. I mean, you have a character who's dying, essentially asking his friend, is my investment in God real? Or, like, it's all on the line right now. Either I'm going to heaven or I'm going to hell, or there's nothing. So tell me, like, what do you believe? And then his friend, still not necessarily knowing, gives him a very friendly answer, to where it's like he can't compromise his own beliefs, but in doing so tells his friend what his friend sort of needs to hear in that moment. And it's like the act of believing, it's the act of faith that is the thing that he needs here, more so than like a scientific yes or no answer. And I think that's, like you said, a little clumsy, but kind of a beautiful sentiment in that way. And I'm glad that you brought up, favorite quotes, because the one that I had to write down was, if Jesus is God, I think he can take care of himself, which Ram says, which I found just stunningly hilarious. I loved it because we're so far into the movie at that point that I was still expecting Ram to like sort of be coming around, and the way that he kind of like flippantly dismisses Amy's sort of like concerns there, and is just like still logically technically correct in that, like, yeah, if he's God, I think he'll be okay. It's kind of like a backhanded insult to his girlfriend. And it's so strange, but I was like, oh man, I was like, okay, I kind of like this guy a lot.
But also, like, him bringing up, if Jesus is God, he can take care of himself. I love Jesus in this movie. I think he's so funny. He's such a good troll in this movie. Because when, like, the first thing we see of Jesus is when Brant and his strike team come down and shoot Jesus, and Brant is standing over Jesus, who is currently dying, and he's like, if you're God, you can stop these bullets. And Jesus, like, with his last breath goes, unless I allow it. And Brant is like, no, stop.
Yeah. Jesus, yeah, smart guy.
I kept trying to work "unless I allow it" into the haiku, and I could never find the syllables for it.
It's it's not a movie that like hinges itself too much on its portrayal of Jesus, which I think is probably for its benefit. Like Jesus is a smaller role in the overall story, and if you really have that Jesus character giving you explicit answers, I think it removes a lot of the elements of the film that are engaging, like, for your thought process, right? Because
Right.
yeah, if Jesus is just going to come out and really like tell you this is it, I'm the son of God, like I'll show you a miracle right here to prove you wrong, but like also let's be kind to our like Muslim friends kind of thing, then it's really spelling out all of that sort of like Christian propaganda that I think its biggest detractors are accusing it of.
Well, and Jesus does perform a miracle in this,
He does.
and I think that the choice of miracle they go with is a very good one for this movie. Jesus has seen Terminator 2. That's the miracle.
Well, yeah, maybe Jesus time traveled. He got his hands on one of those retriever bands and ended up in the future. So, yeah, yeah. I like that. Like Jesus is not as central of this because it's like there's already a lot of movies where like Jesus is a main character, and maybe we don't need that. But I do sort of like the back and forth with him and Simon, and that Simon's mentioning the Mel Gibson movie, Passion of the Christ, I
Passion
assume,
of the Christ.
when he's talking about chunks of Jesus's flesh flying all over the place and him having to turn away from the film when it gets to that point. And like knowing that you're telling that to the guy that's about to go through it, I feel like is a very subversive comedy tactic. And it is definitely intentional in that situation because, you know, Jesus is a character who we're just sort of like discovering can communicate with people that don't speak his language. So to tell this person like you're going to go through all this horrible torture like before it's happening is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, but then like Jesus really takes it on the chin. He just starts quoting movies back at him.
Yeah.
I think yeah, I really like I really like Jesus in this movie. I think he's, you know, he has a few places he has to be at specific times, and he doesn't move from those, but he like also is kind of unfazed by time travel because this, you know, this movie basically does posit that Jesus is God for narrative purposes at the very least.
Yeah, shout out to Jason Castro who plays our Jesus in this film. He does a good job with it, given the circumstances.
And I think that like we were talking about do actors know what movie they're in here? I think Jason Castro fully does. I think he plays Jesus as a very comedic role, but like I guess sincere. Like it's mostly comedic by the fact that he's saying kind of absurd things. But like he, you know, it's a very he knows what he knows exactly the kind of camp he needs to bring to this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, let's go over to the bonus wheel right now because we didn't do trivia, but because this is Assassin 33 AD, we're going to spin the wheel 3 times. I'm going to ask you 3 kind of weird hypothetical questions about this film, and the first one is that you have to sell this movie based on one scene and one scene alone. What scene are you choosing that makes this movie?
I think that the trailer does a really good job of this. The trailer starts off with Brant's team in night vision, watching watching Jesus and his apostles meet up with Roman legionnaires, and then assaulting the whole group and like shooting Jesus. And I think you cannot. I don't think you can sell this movie stronger than a night vision assassination attempt on Jesus. I think that's the one. Like I saw that, I was like, I need to see what's going on in this movie. I need to see how we got here.
That's fair. I think that's a good one. I don't know that this scene that I'm thinking of is a better sales pitch, but in watching it, I enjoyed how it played out was the actual resurrection moment as the ground starts to shake and then the tomb door explodes in a flash of light and Jesus is now gone and back out in the world. Like I just didn't expect it to be an explosive resurrection like that. But I think it's maybe a little bit too short. So let's go to the next question, which is always one of my favorites on the show. And that is, what snack would you pair with this movie?
A steak dinner. They say steak
No, that's
dinner
true.
so many times in this movie. So I don't know if a steak dinner counts as a snack, but we didn't talk about it. Very early on, Ram goes on a date with Amy, and they're supposed to go. She is expecting to go to a restaurant, and he pulls out of his fridge two like fully plated but still raw steaks out of the fridge. And I don't know why you would have that ready in your fridge like that, but it's very shocking. It's a very strange scene.
He's been waiting for this day where a lady would show up to his basement and be able to whip out those steaks.
I guess. How many raw steaks does he have? Like, does he buy every week to make sure he's ready for this situation?
I don't know. I mean, it's you would hope that he would cook it, but Ram's a weird guy. But we're gonna go to the final question from the wheel, and because you're a podcaster, this is a question that I think you'll be very good at answering. You can choose up to 3 characters from this movie to start a podcast together. Who are those characters, and what is their podcast about?
Oh boy, that is an interesting question. I think it might have to be. I think it would have to be Ram, Simon, and Amy, and like their podcast would be about, can we get Ram to believe in Jesus?
Interesting.
And it would be post the whole adventure with Jesus. Can we get Ram to believe in God?
Yeah, it's a very scientific approach. They also would have their own personal experience. I think if I was like backed into a corner, I would pick Jesus, Brant, and Ahmed, because I feel like those are the 2 characters who have the biggest bone to pick with the Son of God. And I mean, you have Jesus and you have people asking questions about God. I mean, this would be a very Christian podcast, but I feel like those 2 guys have a lot of baggage to bring with them into that discussion and a lot of questions for Jesus.
And this version of Jesus is pretty sassy. I think that he would I think that he would be great on that podcast specifically because he would never give. He would always give them answers that to the listener are probably going to be very good, but that they would never be satisfied with, no matter what the question is. Like, what did you have for lunch today? Wouldn't get a satisfying answer.
Yeah, but can you prove that you're the Son of God by your snack choices, Jesus?
And he'd be like, suppose a man has 3 bags of Doritos.
Oh, I'm glad that we ended on that question because that's always a fun one, especially when it's other podcasters I'm speaking to. So now we're going to head over to more or less, and very simple. You're just going to give me one thing that you want more of from this movie and one thing that you want less of.
So the more is fairly easy because I think I would have wanted more of Simon and Ram's relationship in this, and I think the director's cut kind of exposits it a little more than kind of makes up for it a little bit through exposition, but that's not really the way I would want to have that made up for. At the very end, one thing that's always bothered me is that when Ram is describing what he thinks Simon's ideal heaven would look like, it does not at all line up with the character of Simon as I have been seeing him this like whole movie. He says a frat house with lots of beer, and like up to that point we haven't there's nothing about Simon that gives the impression of being a frat bro who drinks a lot. So the fact that his ideal heaven would be that doesn't sit right with me, except it clearly sits right with Simon, because he says that would be nice. And like, he's dying, so I don't think he's just saying that because he also is trying to make his friend feel good about, what he's saying. So I think that like, what I'm missing from this movie is I want to see a little bit more of, why would Simon say that's nice? Either a little bit more about Simon or a little bit more that like tells me that they are actually good friends and that they actually know about each other, instead of, a final scene where Ram describes a Simon I have not seen in the last hour and a half of movie.
Yeah, that's fair. You don't want your best friend misinterpreting your heaven, especially if it's like, hey, if this is okay, I'll settle, whatever. I'll go for some beers. But yeah, he doesn't come across as a frat boy. As much as the movies are dissimilar, I couldn't help but think about Primer, in that it is sort of friends that invent time travel in their basement, essentially. And having as many characters as this movie has, I think really robs us of the relationship between Simon and Ram, because a lot of that is replaced with kind of like a superficial love story, as much as, through no fault of the actress. But yeah, it's very low hanging fruit. And if this was sort of like a buddy time travel comedy and it's really just the two of them that are the scientists, I feel like even the moment of his death and the moment of them together in the past have much greater implications if it's just the two of them.
Right. Yeah, I think I'd pretty much agree with that. I don't know that I can answer this question really well. I guess less racism, but I think that one of the things that's like endearing about this movie is it is a very singular vision.
Yes.
And that singular vision involves someone bringing their worldview to this movie. And I think that the stuff in this movie that is offensive or problematic mostly comes from what looks like a place of ignorance.
Yes.
And so really what I would say more about that point is I wish that Jim Carroll had a writing partner who could see what I see in Jim Carroll, but also filter it through that knew the right questions to ask Jim Carroll to refine this story. Because when I was hearing that interview quote that you said, where Jim Carroll said, I know people are going to struggle, I don't think that you should know that people are going to struggle by the time you are filming the movie. You should at least hope that people are going to have a pretty clear idea of where things are at any given point. And I think with the right writing partner, you could come to a place where the broad plot of this movie is exactly the same, but also it's not confusing, and also it's maybe not as problematic in the ways that it ends up being, that then have to be corrected by the director's cut. Basically, I think the director's cut corrections are clumsy and wouldn't have to be done if they had just made the movie right the first time.
That's fair, because it's almost like this acknowledgement that like I made something that's so convoluted that only I will understand it, yet we pushed it into production. But it would make sense that if the cast read the script and like, well, I don't really understand it, but I'm getting paid, and it's work, and like actors got to act, so I can understand that. But the kind of, like I said, the nucleus of the movie with all this stuff pointing towards belief in whether or not like Jesus is legit, I think is a solid nucleus. And then the idea that they take I think they even use it in the movie, is the like, well, if you could go back in time and like stop Hitler from being Hitler kind of thing, right? That's the idea, except for in this case, like you're equating Hitler to Jesus.
It's such a weird quote. It feels. I think that when people bring up time travel just in regular conversation, it's a pretty common question to be like, would you go back in time and kill Hitler? And I think there is something to the idea that, well, if you killed Hitler, maybe that would make things worse. I think there's a short story about exactly that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think that is like it's an idea that people have explored in literature before too. But like the way that it comes across in this movie is, again, could he used a second pass? Because he's like, why wouldn't you? Would you go back in time and kill Hitler? Imagine a world without Hitler is a quote that I constantly catch. I catch it every time I watch this movie, and it's never quite right because it's like, imagine a world without Hitler. I would like to, actually. I think that might be a good world. I know what point you're getting at. That particular quote is not really the way to get at that point.
Yeah. And then it's like, hey, we're going back in time to assassinate Jesus. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're sort of lumping Jesus and Hitler in together in this equation. I think accidentally. I don't think the point is to be like, oh, well, Jesus has caused all of this suffering. I think the point is to just eliminate him and make Islam the dominant religion on the planet, which I think it already is anyway, in just terms of sheer numbers. So not really sure exactly what's Ahmed's endgame is.
Well, and it's weird because I certainly don't know. I don't know enough about religion to say that without Jesus, Islam definitely would not have existed. But, I have a Muslim colleague who was talking to me about, well, not this movie, but this kind of stuff earlier this week, and specifically said, like, yeah, the Quran builds on the Bible because the Bible came first, and then the Bible builds on the Torah. So it's like we have all these books that we do, consider. It's just that, Islam is the most recent one, or the Quran is the most recent one. And so, when you delete Jesus, I don't know, maybe Islam still comes around, but you're missing an important part of Islam.
Yeah. And yeah, Jesus is a respected prophet in that religion. So yeah, that part gets a little muddy. So I just want to ask you, like, is there anything specifically about the movie that you really wanted to talk about that we haven't gotten a chance to talk about yet?
I don't think so. No, not really. I mean, I have, like I said, I've shown you several times, and it's, listeners won't see this, but I've shown you my timelines several times. But I think we've talked about the important part of these timelines, which is that they exist. So, that's, couple of like weird things I noticed. Very, very short. Yeah. The soundtrack for this movie is insane. Like, not like it's wild or anything. It's just very bizarre choices. The date that Amy and Ram go on is scored by what sounds like Skyrim. Like, it sounds like Skyrim music, just like ambient video game music, which is an odd choice for a scene that visually is supposed to be romantic, but then with the audio seems dire. It seems like they're clearly enjoying each other's company, but it feels like they're both under duress somehow. And so I think the soundtrack choices for this are very strange. And there's another point where at least Simon is regularly asking about how are they going to get paid. And every time money is brought up, they only ever talk about their bonuses. So is this a job where they are exclusively paid in bonuses, or do they have like a salary?
That's how secret it is.
Yeah, I guess. And like, those are the only things I wrote down that like, oh wait, one other thing. It's Heidi Montag, right?
Yeah.
Does she have a British accent? I don't think she does.
I don't think so. If she does, then I apologize. But yeah, there is a very strong emphasis on, that British accent. That's how you'll know it's my wife. She's the only one in the movie with a British accent.
Which is so wild because, I mean, since I know to listen for it, there's one word where I think it has an R at the end and she doesn't emphasize the R very much. But like, one word does not a British accent make. So I don't know what he's talking about. They emphasize that a lot, actually. She's not in the movie, barely. She's barely in the movie. But correct. Everyone points out that she has a British accent, which is very strange. It's never seen in action.
Yeah, she's from Colorado, so I'm gonna say probably no to the British accent. And it does feel very fake, and it's also completely unnecessary to the character to have her be British, other than you really wanted the line of the character who's like, "Oh, that British accent is just like so endearing."
Yeah, because at the very end, the ghost of Heidi Montag, I guess, comes to, you don't see it, but she like talks to Ram Goldstein, who looks at Brandt and says, "Be a hero," and that's how he knows it's his wife. But he goes, "British accent," just to confirm that it's his wife. And it's like no one else would say "be a hero" to Brandt in that moment, other than, someone who either had talked to his wife and knew that, or his wife. So you can just assume. You don't need to confirm the British accent that's not there in the first place.
Correct. One of many insane choices throughout the course of this film. I think now's a good time to go to Critics Corner. We'll hear a little bit about what the critics had to say, because some of it's nice, some of it's not so nice. I pulled a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. I'm going to try to sort this in ascending order of value. So we're starting with Mike McGranahan, I think, from Aisle Seat. Gave it a 0 out of 4. Says it's, quote, a racist, hate-filled work. The people who made Assassin 33 AD need to spend less time thumping their Bible and more time actually studying it. So, yeah.
I think it's, I get what he's saying. He's saying it very meanly, but that's, he's saying it very authoritatively, which is
Yes.
part of being a critic, is you want to say things authoritatively. I do disagree a little bit in that I think this does not, to me, feel like a movie made by Bible thumpers. Like
Correct.
that's the part of that I disagree with specifically. I don't think that the people who made this movie spent very much time thumping their Bible at all. Yes, they maybe also didn't spend as much time as they should reading it, but I think that personally, I think that any critique of this movie that emphasizes how deeply Christian it is actually missing. Maybe needs to go and watch more deeply Christian movies, because this doesn't actually. I think it's a little weird how not deeply Christian this is compared to other movies I've seen, which I would describe in that way.
Yeah, as I prepared to watch it, I sort of feared that it was going to be the kind of deeply Christian movie that was very transparent in its motives in that way. And we've seen some of those come out over the last couple of years as well. But this, I don't think is that. But it does point to the people that like are the biggest detractors sort of felt that coming from this movie. And that's why they had such a negative response to it.
Yeah, I don't want to make too many assumptions about Mark McGranahan, but I do think that I think that this is a movie that it's very easy to go into with a specific set of expectations. And if you don't free yourself of those expectations before you watch it, it is very easy to confirm those expectations.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So fortunately, I had no expectations of anything when I push play, and I think that did me a lot of favors. So let's climb the ladder, and we're gonna go with Steven Silver from Splice Today. Gave it a 1.5 out of 5. Ooh. Says, while Assassin 33 AD doesn't work as cinema or storytelling, it's got all the unintentional laughs you could possibly want. So beginning to enter into the territory that we're talking about, I think.
Yeah, I would say, the pull quote begins to get at that. I guess maybe I should read that review, because I feel like I would probably agree with most of what this person is saying, at least based on that pull quote.
Yeah, 3 out of 10 is kind of in line with some of the other scores I saw, so not really like that far off. But like if you have some unintentional laughs, like it's the makings of some of those classic, like The Room or Troll 2, where it's like, can you believe that this movie is as sort of unintentionally funny as it is, and it's because it takes itself seriously that you do get some of the unintentional humor, and so at least Steven was able to see that.
I remember hearing, I don't remember where exactly I heard it, but I remember hearing on some podcast once someone, the podcast group was interviewing someone who had made a game, a flash game based on The Room in Newgrounds, and they'd been really worried. They'd been really obsessed with a lot of what they had seen as plot holes in The Room. So they'd invented this side story about Johnny being a vampire. And okay. I don't remember the other guy, the guy who I think it's Mark, Greg Sestero's character, about him being a secret agent trying to find this vampire. And apparently, so said this guy who had made the game. He talked to Greg Sestero afterwards, and talked a little bit about his game. And Greg Sestero was like, "Yeah, that actually you hit the nail on the head. Johnny was supposed to be a vampire, and I was a FBI agent. It just didn't make it into the movie."
Wow.
And I mean, even if Greg Sestero was taking the piss, it's like that's kind of sick, you know?
Yeah, that's very cool. What is the name of that game?
I don't remember. I don't remember I think it was just probably The Room, the game. I've never played it myself, but it was, if you look for Room Flash Game Newgrounds, you'll probably find it.
All right. I'll have to check that out. Okay.
I don't remember how I got on that, but anyway. Someone taking things seriously.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. We've got Jackie K. Cooper from JackieKCooper.com. Gave it a 6 out of 10. Says a mashup of science fiction with a faith-based film. Never gonna happen. But with this movie, it did. And for some unqualifiable reason, it works.
I don't understand the never gonna happen part. But I mean, this is a pull quote, so we're getting from a whole review down to one sentence here. But yeah, I think that mashup does. I think I agree. I think it works for this movie, and I haven't seen any other Christian time travel movies, but I think it is it's a hard sell, and this one makes it work for all the reasons we've talked about, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it works for me. So let's see. I think I did the math correctly. That would put us at Bob Bloom from the Journal and Courier gave it a 2.5 out of 4, which I think is technically a 62 something, and says Assassin 33 AD plays like a project film majors at Oral Roberts University would produce as their senior final exam. And, I could see that.
Oral Roberts is a Christian university in not Utah, but somewhere in the Midwest, I think, right? Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, it's in Oklahoma. Yeah, for all of the inquiring minds out there. But we'll go to Jason Escamilla to close it out, and this is from Eskimo TV.
Okay.
Gave it a B-, no numerical score, but B- is a 80 to 83, so I'm going to say 4 out of 5 on this one. Says, despite feeling noticeably contrived, the premise should appeal to a niche Christian sci-fi loving audience who can expect fun, action, and an entertaining, fast-paced story.
And I think it hits. I think it hits that very well, because I think that I myself am not fully engrossed in the Christian movie sphere, but I'm at least tangential to it. And I think that what so many larger Christian movies are missing, this scratches an itch that's just not represented within that space very often. And is it perfect? No, but it's different. You're not getting, I keep bringing up God's Not Dead because it's a really good example of a modern Christian movie. You're not getting God's Not Dead or Sound of Freedom again. This is something very different that barely even fits in the same genre as those, but kind of made for the same type of audience.
Yeah, maybe skewing a little bit younger.
Yeah.
Which I think is okay in this case. And so at least we close it out on a good note. And I think besides appealing to that niche Christian audience that Jason mentions, it appeals to sort of the so bad it's good audience as well, and has kind of developed a reputation in those circles, and that's how it ended up on this show. But
yeah,
for people that do like this movie, or for people who have not seen this movie, but maybe might take a chance on it based on your recommendation, what is a good gateway drug movie for people to use as a launching pad to end up at Assassin 33 AD?
So I misunderstood this question slightly. So I have two versions of an answer for this question. I'll start with the one you actually asked. So it's like a good starting point. If you haven't seen Assassin 33 AD, I think the movie I would maybe not most compare it to, but be like, if you've seen this and liked it, give Assassin 33 a chance. Mm-hmm. Predestination is the one I came up with. The Ethan Hawke movie where it's another time travel movie, and it's got a lot of intersecting timelines that eventually come together in a satisfying way. And that's one of the things I personally really like about Assassin 33 AD, is that for all the craziness, the timelines come together in a satisfying way. And so I really like Predestination for this. I have not yet seen Primer, but I would assume, like from everything I've heard, Primer sort of scratches that same kind of itch. So I think if someone has seen Predestination or Primer, or just likes time travel movies that do get a little convoluted, this one I think is not so convoluted that it's incomprehensible, but convoluted enough that like you enjoy putting in the work to understand what's going on. And another one that I put down here, which is a very different sort of kind of a different audience here. If you've seen James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Assassin 33 AD has features the third president of the Latin American country that they're trying to assassinate the president of a Latin American country, and they assassinate him, and his right-hand man takes over, and then they assassinate the right-hand man, and the third guy down plays Ahmed Akbar in this movie, and has a little more to do. So it's very, I think that it's like a really fun role for Gerardo Davila, and if you enjoyed him in his 3 minutes in The Suicide Squad, you'll enjoy his many more than 3 minutes here.
Nice. I like that.
And
good options there.
The second version of this question that I answered, because like I said, I got a little confused. And one version of understanding this question was if Assassin 33 AD were to be a gateway drug to other movies, what would be a movie that you would watch after this if you enjoyed this movie? And I put down The Carpenter, which is one that I'm sure you have not heard of.
I have not.
It's a Christian MMA movie. It's about a Viking who winds up in Nazareth and is like and is adopted by a family there, and goes to Jerusalem to enter the Ultimate Fighting Championship in Jerusalem, and also become apprentice to a local carpenter who is Jesus. And that movie is also pretty flawed, but is once again like, you see that the people behind it had something they were really passionate about. In this case, MMA, and wanted to make a movie about that through their worldview. And they are very Christian, so they ended up making a Jesus MMA movie, which is very fun.
Interesting. Does Jesus fight in the movie?
No, Jesus himself is not a fighter. He is the guy who is the fighter is the apprentice to Jesus the carpenter.
So Jesus is like Mr. Miyagi.
Kind of. He gives him like, the guy also has a fighting trainer, but Jesus is like his life coach.
Oh, okay.
He'll often give him advice that ends up being relevant in the fight, but is more about his personal life than the fighting part of it.
Interesting. It sounds diabolical when you spell it out like that, but I feel like I need to check it out now.
Yeah, if you need someone to talk about The Carpenter, I'll come back and talk about it. Although I will say I don't like The Carpenter quite as much as I like this movie.
Fair. I mean, I have been a big MMA fan for a long time. I kind of like fell off in the last couple of years for several reasons, but I feel like it would probably maybe not ring true, but I would get a lot of the references that are being made.
Yeah.
I think the direction that I went was a little literal with this question, in that I went with The Time Changer from 2002, which is written and directed by Rich Cristiano. So same, like, singular vision. And that's about a Bible professor from 1890 who travels forward in time to the present via time machine and cannot believe what he sees, and things spiral from there. So it's a little bit more, I think, superficially connected, but little slightly higher on a little bit of the review scales, has a little bit bigger footprint. So if you're looking for like Christian time travel movies, there are more than one.
Is that like a Christian version of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine?
I think so. Like, it's the way that it kind of like comes across, but yeah, because I feel like The Time Machine is probably actually like a better gateway drug movie to Assassin 33 AD, and that especially especially the remake too that was made, I think, with Guy Pearce, is like very sort of fantastical and family friendly, and like the stakes are high. It gets a little weird there, but I think if you like sort of like the fun of the time travel adventure, then it's a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've written that one down because I haven't seen The Time Changer, and now I will have to correct it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if it's a good decision or not. But, you've been such a great sport. This has been a lot of fun. I think even though a lot of what we talked about points directly towards Jim Carroll, I feel like we actually sort of touched on a lot of things that are important in the conversation to be had about this movie. And I want to give you an opportunity to plug your show and tell my audience where they can find you.
So, like I said at the beginning, which is a while ago now, so if you've forgotten, I'm going to say it again. I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast Classic Movies Live. We talk about mostly movies as they're coming out, but we've got a bunch of different formats that we really like. One format that we really like that we're currently working on is Director Showdown, where we pit two directors from the last 26 years against each other in a tournament bracket, and at the very end we are going to come up with a winner. The idea for that, I won't go too far into it, but Rotten Tomatoes did a tournament bracket of directors for their 25th anniversary, and they had some very funny matchups. So I have stolen their tournament bracket, and we're doing the same matchups, just one film for each director, trying to explore a certain theme and, see where we land. We've already deviated a little bit from them. But just for an example of, what a typical episode of that might look like, our first episode talked about institutional corruption, and we used the movies. It was, I'm forgetting the names now, but the movies were Training Day and Monsters, Inc.
Okay.
So, yeah. So one movie from each director, and, Pete Docter will be advancing to our second round, hopefully within the year, but we'll figure it out. It's taken a while. Those are big, high effort episodes. We got two coming up soon that I'm very excited about.
Yeah, those are, big projects to take on. So I commend you, because I try to keep everything very compartmentalized, and even running subseries on the show is very robust undertaking at times. And I'm like, hey, this is a great idea, but if I do it, I have to do so much more work than I'm already doing, and I don't want to do that just yet. So some things just stay in the incubator until I have more time. But you also just recently covered Superman as well. So
yes,
we talk about movies that are like, in the public sphere and in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, so like I said, we have a bunch of different formats. Usually we're talking about a recent movie that just came out. But another thing we like to do is I like to bring on guests to talk about what they consider a classic movie, because I think classic is there's like kind of movies that are accepted classics, but it's kind of a fuzzy definition. What makes a movie a classic is very interesting to me. So, if someone wants to come on and talk about why Paddington 2 specifically is a classic movie, I'm interested in why. And we have that episode, actually. We have an episode on why is Paddington 2 a classic movie. So that's always, if anyone is listening to this and wants to come on, these are both of the formats I've given are ones where we regularly need guests. So,
awesome.
Check it out and reach out if you want to be on that. And hopefully soon, I just need to put in the time to actually do it. We will be on more than just Spotify. So anyone who's listening on some other platform, hopefully we will eventually be on that platform too.
Yeah, the distribution work is always a little tricky, and Spotify is not my host. So I picked a host that specifically would do the distribution work for me, so I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But even then, there's still several steps of I have to apply. Sometimes there's a little bit longer of an application process. It took weeks to get the shows onto Apple. It's been a little bit faster now, but it is out there. But for people that want to contact you, maybe be a guest on your show, how do they contact you? I have your email, but they don't.
Well, you can. For one thing, I am on Twitter, which is actually where I do most of my guest contacting at UBCO CML. But also, my email address the email address of the show is ubcomoviemaniacs@gmail.com. And if you reach out there, I will see it. So, if you have any feedback about the show, if you want to potentially ever be a guest, that would be the place to go. So, please email me if you're listening to this and you're interested.
Awesome. Well, I will, of course, have the links for all of that stuff up in the show notes for everybody. So all they're going to have to do is click, and it's going to open the Mail To form, and it'll be very easy for them to get in touch with you. But yeah, Jeff, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I didn't know what to expect from the movie. I didn't know what to expect from the conversation, but I feel like all things considered, we did a very good job of talking about this movie in a light that highlights why it's good, acknowledges why it's bad, but also really treats it with an air of admiration.
Well, what I really liked about your show is that you and your guests are often able to do exactly that. As you've said before, this is bad movies we love. We're talking about movies that we love. We're not going to just sit here and blindly praise it. There's obviously lots of things in this movie and probably every movie that you talk about that are reasons they would be considered bad movies in the first place. But, as I said halfway through the episode, Jim Carroll, if you're listening to this, my goal in talking about it is to get you money to make another movie. I love this movie a lot, and I want to see you do more. I think, I want to see you do a second one that's better. I hope that Jim Carroll is, interested in improving as a filmmaker, because I think he's already got impressive ideas, and I think that with some polish, you end up getting even better stuff out of it. So that's what I want to see.
Well, he's got the Pickleball Killer in the works right now. As you mentioned, he's kind of obsessed with pickleball now. And that is a story about an aging pickleball sensation with a mysterious past becomes the target of the cartel after he rescues a young trafficked girl and attempts to give her a better life.
I don't love that synopsis, but we will see. We'll see how the Pickleball Killer ends up being.
Yeah, it's on Blacklist, but I can't read it. I guess I got to sign up for Blacklist to be able to read these projects. But he is working on it. So, maybe one day, maybe another day, we'll get the sequel to Assassin, where we battle the Antichrist in the post-apocalypse. Or maybe it's not the post-apocalypse. Maybe it's just Jesus has turned into the evil Superman and rules the world.
Well, what I did realize on this watch through is that one of the things that Ahmed Akbar, when he goes back into the tomb, takes a lock of Jesus's hair. So I think the Antichrist might be a clone.
Clone Jesus, that's right.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, can we get Injustice version of Jesus in the next movie?
Yeah, I mean, if that doesn't sound appealing to you, then like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Evil clone Jesus sounds great to me.
Sounds great to me too.
Let's do it, Jim. We're gonna help you get this movie made.
Yeah, I will help however I can. Just reach out, Jim.
Cool. Well, thank you, man. This has been a pleasure. You know, when I removed like trivia and the production notes and all that, I was like, well, I don't know if we're going to even make it to the 90-minute mark. And here we are at 2 hours. So this has been a joy, and I will follow up with you. I'll find a classic movie, and I will make that my goal to come and talk to you about a classic movie on your show.
Oh, perfect. And, after we're done, I've got some stuff that I can talk to you about too. So
awesome. Well, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. This, as I said, is going to be a December slated release, as that's the next time I have like free slots open. But I think it just kind of worked out where it's probably most appropriately lined up to be a December movie, as it turns out.
Maybe it ends up a Christmas release. This could be a Christmas episode.
Maybe, my friend. All right. Well, you take care and have yourself a good day.
Thanks. You too.
A big thanks to Jeff for coming on the show and bringing this movie to the table, because there is a very high probability that without him, I never would have heard about this movie. I never would have watched this movie, and definitely would not have brought it to the show. And we actually recorded this one back in July, but was waiting for the right time to actually release it out into the world. And since it is Christmas season, I feel like this is the appropriate time to do it, and I hope you have fun with us. If you did, make sure to check out Jeff's work over at Classic Movies Live. They're doing the Director Showdown over there, and you can check out Jeff's writing at ContraZoomPod.com. I will have the links in the show notes for both of those. And of course, thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to this episode or to any episode of the show, really. I know there's a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, and I very much appreciate you taking the time to listen to this one. Time is valuable, and I'm incredibly grateful that you've entrusted me with yours. I hope it brings some joy, some entertainment, some laughter to your life. If you do enjoy the show, please consider leaving a review or at least a rating, and tell a friend about it. If you don't enjoy it, then maybe let's keep that between us. The new members-only section is live at badmovieswelove.captivate.fm/support, and I'd love to hear from you if you're interested. So you can email me at badmovieswelove@thesheist.com, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at badmovieswelove, LUV. Until next time, take care, be well, and have fun however you get your movies. I know you're out there somewhere, Rids. I love you.